What's going on, y'all? KMBest here. Let's take a look at the best decks to climb in Marvel Snap. Shou-Lao Ongoing is, I think at this point, the best kept secret in High Infinite. I was shocked at how few people in the Golden Gauntlet were actually on this list and how many of them did quite well because they were on this list. This is the Shou-Lao list that is best equipped to deal with combo decks on a proactive basis. If your opponent is comboing off incredibly powerfully, you can combo off with the best of them. What this deck does is leverage Moonstone and Captain Carter in a way that allows the deck to have a second way to get a gigantic Maverick and not just be reliant on Shou-Lao. This also is a powerful play when you are willing to protect that lane with something like a Cosmo. What this can do is create final turns where you have a Maverick that is getting buffed by tons of stuff and allows you to win that lane without worrying about anything, and then win another lane with the Maverick buff going on to something that is probably face down and thus safe from interaction. As far as Shou-Lao lists goes, this one feels like it's the one that is the best at beating not just the other Shou-Lao lists, but all of the other combo decks in the game. Couple of things to try out here. Maybe a Mercury over the Hope Summers is something to do, but both Hope Summers and Surge are actually quite important because without them, you don't have access to your most powerful combo draws. Getting that extra energy really gets you towards those extremely powerful Moonstone games, and that is a really interesting dynamic here. This is also, as a more combo-oriented Shou-Lao deck, one of the ones that is a little bit harder to have always perfectly good draws with. Unlike the Batroc Show list, which is consistently doing powerful things, this list can clunk. You will have games where it's like, oh, my entire opening hand is 3s and above, and I instantly lose the game. That's real. It's not a great thing. But those are the sacrifices you make in order to make what I think is probably the best deck in the game work in the way that it does. A powerful, proactive game plan, doubling up on Maverick, so you're not just reliant on Shou-Lao, and you simply have more points than other people who are doing what you're doing with the big red dragon. I almost put this one first, but it is quite a difficult deck to play. That said, this is the list that W won the Golden Gauntlet with, and of course, we will have an interview with W coming up on Tuesday for a more in-depth breakdown of this deck, but the basic plan here is to beat your opponent by dragging them down to your level and beating them with experience. This is the control deck of the format, and it does a really good job. This is a deck that relies entirely on stopping your opponents from doing things that they want to do. Your opponent is a Batroc list, you Electra it. Your opponent is a Star-Lord list, you Supergiant it. Your opponent is playing Iska, Supergiant is great there too, interfering with end of turns and things of that nature. Your opponent's a Shou-Lao deck, okay, you make sure the Shou-Lao ends up going face down because you are playing something like a Supergiant to disrupt it. Perfect, great, excellent. You blow it up with either a Cosmo preventing the on reveal or a Negasonic preventing the thing that's going to get the buff from actually being alive. All of that requires intimate knowledge of what your opponent is doing and the ability to read what your opponent is going to do. So while this deck does have naturally pretty positive matchups into Star-Lord lists, into Shou-Lao lists, into Iska lists, it is going to end up needing to be correct a lot. So you're going to have a pretty good idea of what your opponent is thinking if you want to succeed with this list. Also, can I just take a little bit of a victory lap here? Take a look at this. I said it 11 days ago. Also, I also want to express, I think it's very possible that Supergiant stocks skyrocket in the next few weeks, right? Iska comes out, Invisible Woman first steps, farmed by Supergiant. Supergiant is already really good into something like Star-Lord. I think there's a lot of things pushing me in the direction of Supergiant's going to get a little bit better in the next week or two. Not bad for a YouTuber. As far as all-in Invisible Woman lists, I prefer the Smiz version of Invisible Woman. This is a very weak to Supergiant list, so maybe don't take it out of the box just right now. But if you're not seeing a lot of Supergiant, this deck gets to put itself in very powerful positions. It uses Goose to dodge common interaction like Cosmic Ghost Rider that allows you to set up really powerful combos of activate cards in a lane, usually those activate cards being Jocasta and Invisible Woman first steps. This allows you to get a bunch of procs on all of your stuff, and once you have a bunch of procs on all of your stuff, Iska with 4 procs probably wins any lane, and a Athena that's going to be 12 power probably wins the lane that a Goose is in. This thought process is a very straightforward one that really lends itself to being able to execute a combo game plan. The reason for Goose over Cosmo is largely cost related. You just are much more able to fit a 2 cost into your curve than you are a 3 cost without sacrificing future equity in terms of your ability to combo as high as you want. And this is very much a combo deck. If you're not Invisible Woman in first stepsing, you're kind of not doing a lot, but this is a very powerful list that leverages Iska to the fullest extent. And Iska is a card that is quite powerful. She's showing up in a bunch of different spaces. This is what all-in Iska kind of looks like, but it doesn't always have to look like this. There are other Iska lists that are succeeding in being powerful, using her in a much more restrained capacity. One dynamic to keep an eye on is the development of Star-Lord hybrids. After Star-Lord's nerf, I think a lot of people expected the exact same list to remain dominant, but the loss of a major way of winning that kind of matchup, which is to say Star-Lord's big enough that it takes priority, then I Alioth a couple lanes, without those points on Star-Lord and with the points lost on Alioth, that's become a lot less reliable. So what Star-Lord has done after getting nerfed is actually very similar to what Shou-Lao did after getting nerfed. The dedicated Shou-Lao decks disappeared, and everyone started playing hybrid Shou-Lao. And in much the same way, the dedicated Star-Lord decks have mostly disappeared, and people are now playing hybrid Star-Lord, which has led to negative Star-Lord being the sort of dominant method of playing the deck recently. This was the list that got second place in the Golden Gauntlet, of course, and it is a very, very reasonable attempt at doing what this deck is trying to do. What this deck is saying is, I'm going to have one of these combos pull it off. I think that even before the nerf to Star-Lord, this was already the best way to play Mr. Negative. Now, it might be the best way to play both Mr. Negative and Star-Lord. Another version of Star-Lord that is hybridizing is the Star-Lord version that is playing with Phoenix Force and Fire Lord to multiply Star-Lord even more. The basic thing to take away from this is your stock Star-Lord deck still may be fine, but generally speaking, injecting power from other sources seems to be what's called for right now. For what it's worth, this is what I've been playing recently. It's what I used to climb to Infinite. It's been like a pretty solid little list. I was just trying to figure out where the points are supposed to come from. Roram and I have been sort of messing around in this space because without Star-Lord and Fin-Fang, you're kind of not doing a lot of points. And what we arrived at was like, I guess it's a Black Panther. Maybe the Legion can come back in if people are going to be forced off of Iska. You can be like more of a Legion gamer instead of a Cosmic Ghost Rider gamer. But a lot of what's been happening is just like, I don't really know where the points are coming from here. And I have to figure out where the points are coming from, or otherwise I'm not going to be able to win any games because I need points to win games. So the Black Panther's in here now. This is just sort of where my head has been at for like a more traditional Star-Lord build. Can't say I fully recommend it, just sort of demonstrating what the weaknesses of traditional Star-Lord are. It's that you just don't have a second big enough guy. And believe me, before everyone types in the comments like, oh, you should try Magneto, oh, you should try Man-Spider, I've done it. I've tried those things. Like, it's just, there's not a big enough guy. Doom 2099 is going to be within 2 cards of this. This was the list that Zulabur played to a top 4 finish in the Golden Gauntlet. But I do think that this is like close enough to being right. Like really what you'll see that's different is Jack Flag and Thing First Steps. Instead, you will see Mercury and a Cannonball, right? That's kind of it. Like, that's really the only difference that you're going to see in these lists is those 2 spots. So let's just put this list on there and talk about the list like holistically as if it were 14 cards and you can pick whichever of those 2 combinations of 3 and 5 you would like to play. Doom 2099's greatest strength is also its greatest weakness. This is a deck that is extremely easy to play, and it is also extremely easy to predict. Its power is immense, and if you're looking for a deck that is going to get better and better and better and better and better in a world where people are playing Supergiant, this is the list. This is a deck that, with a Doom 2099, is just going to beat Supergiant basically every single time. Iska's actually quite a bad card in that matchup. She might be on the chopping block here, but I do think that the main point being made here is this is a deck that is extremely easy to play, that can flowchart its way to wins against a lot of stuff. Some stuff is still going to go over the top, but it still can flowchart itself into very dominating positions, and that allows it to be a successful deck in the current era of what Marvel Snap is. Probably the easiest deck available for anyone to play, almost the reverse of Supergiant. If you want a deck that you can just guarantee you'll be pretty good at playing, this is the deck, and it's pretty good. It's weird to put Shou-Lao Batroc as low as I am, and the reason that it's here is almost purely in deference to specifically the Shou-Lao ongoing deck. That's a really bad matchup, and you just never want to be the deck that is taking the bad matchup in the pseudo mirror, and that has pushed Shou-Lao Batroc pretty significantly down the list here, which is to say, people start picking up that Shou-Lao ongoing deck like High Infinite has. I mean, I did call it a secret, but it's in my video at the top of the tier list, so it probably isn't one. This is the deck that's going to suffer because it is doing the same thing as those other Shou-Lao lists, but it loses the heads up, and it's not really a solvable problem, right? Like, Cougar and Iris were playing Super Adaptoid. You can try it, but it's just really tough to actually get anywhere. An Echo could be an idea that could take the deck better in that matchup, but once you're teching for that specific matchup, you just start asking yourself, why am I not just playing that version of the deck? And I think that largely that's the question that has to be asked of the Batroc list is like, what is it that makes you want to play this instead of ongoing? And the answer is usually it's safer. You are going to have a safer, more consistent game plan with this list than you are with the ongoing list. And that is a reasonable option. But you're kind of locking yourself into a safe second place rather than a slightly riskier first place. And that does and can cost you in the aggregate when you're climbing up ladder. It's a good choice if you're a safe player who's willing to understand all of the intricacies of this deck, but there are a lot of those. And in order to be a safe player with this deck, you kind of have to know all of them. So suddenly it's gone from a deck that I think was very close to the top of the metagame to a deck that is a little bit more towards the middle, purely on the strength of that one really bad matchup against the ongoing Shou-Lao list. Aurora is a really interesting list in that it's kind of like the tech slop of this metagame, in as much as, like, you know, Supergiant is also that. Aurora is that, but it's like little brother to Doom's big brother. And that is an interesting sort of dynamic where it's like, when you look at both of the tech slop decks, this and Supergiant, they both get big brothered by Doom 2099 pretty strenuously, which sort of is revelatory of Doom 2099's actual role in the metagame, which is there's all these combo decks running around. And so you play something to beat one of the combo decks, and then Doom 2099 beats you, and then loses to the combo decks. And that's sort of how things are shaping up right now. Aurora's a deck that's just quite good at dealing with a bunch of random combo stuff. It's a Cosmo deck. It's an Iceman deck. It's a Spider-Ham deck. You're getting rid of stuff. It's a Stardust deck. It's a Mercury deck. Tons of stuff. Iska's been a pretty cool addition here because the deck has all this tech, but has often lacked for power. And having actual power in the deck is quite helpful when you are doing something that is so reliant on stopping your opponent from doing stuff. If you're a lover of dragging your opponent down to your level, this is the deck that is most equipped to do it. This specific list comes from a player named Como_Dino, whose name I am positive I am mispronouncing. Ended up 14th in the Golden Gauntlet. I like it. I wish that there wasn't a bug with Spider-Ham right now. It would be a notably better deck if there wasn't. The Hantamex is another sort of mid-rangey interactive deck. The goal here is to, again, drag your opponent down to your level. What I'm really interested in, though, specifically is I don't know how good or how competent this deck is against two things. Those things are the Invisible Woman First Steps deck with Goose that can prevent you from Cosmic Ghost Ridering it meaningfully, and Supergiant, which could be a very relevant card against what you're doing. I really don't know how those two matchups play out. Against the rest of the field, I think this is a pretty good choice. It can go mid-range for mid-range with a bunch of stuff. It has interactive tools that people aren't particularly used to playing around. There's a little more power in it than you think, and it's quite good against things like Maverick and Captain Carter, and generally just going to be a pretty reasonable choice in a lot of different spots. Most of the time you're playing something like this, you'll have a Gambit YOLO in order to get out of whatever position you were putting yourself in. Interestingly, the card that feels like the least powerful in this deck is Victoria Hand. Like, she's cool. She's some points. You're happy to have some points, but she's really not hitting all that much. And I kind of wonder if there's other options that could be a powerful card in that context. Maybe a Cable or something. Just anything that's like a pretty good guy that gets you to do pretty good guy stuff. But I don't know. There's definitely things that are up in the air about how this list is built and how it's meant to play out. And I think that it's a very interesting and low to the ground list that does some interesting and low to the ground things in a world where maybe that's a little less incentivized than it was before Golden Gauntlet. The Gamer Pixie Gore list is like a soft Mr. Negative list with a lot more front-end interaction. Mr. Negative is always going power to power. This deck has interaction in the form of Deafening Chord, in the form of Cosmo, Madam Web. A lot of things that can keep your opponents down here. It's also a powerful magic list just by virtue of a lot of the decks that are good right now are quite bad into magic. That is a relevant outcome here. So, for example, Star-Lord pretty much is comboing on 5. If you magic on 5, not great. If your opponent is playing the Supergiant list that W is playing, magic is really good against there. They just don't have a lot of powerful things to be playing. If your opponent is playing something like a Shou-Lao list, they don't scale with an extra turn nearly as well as basically any other deck scales with an extra turn because they're kind of just doing the Maverick thing, right? So this is a deck that has sort of innate good things happening because you can magic on 5 against a lot of those decks and have it be really, 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 really good. Or if you're playing as a Supergiant deck, you magic on 3, but you know what I'm saying here, right? And it also gets some really powerful Pixie things going on. You can stack up big numbers. You can do unexpected and crazy things. And it leverages Iska really powerfully. Like, this is just a deck where it's really hard to contest an Iska because there could be an Iron Man in that lane and you would instantly lose that contest. And that is a lot of the threat here. You have one lane that just this extremely powerful threat is in, and then another lane where you're using your energy cheat to do something ridiculous. The magic also works with the Iska, by the way. Pretty nice to have an extra turn there. And so you have this ability to do things like, you know, you magic, you have a Cosmo on the magic lane, so they can't get rid of the thing, and then you move the Cosmo on the final turn of the game because you have a Madam Web, so they have to start, like, respecting that they might be able to, or they might not be able to use their interaction on your stuff. A lot of things going on here that are pretty solid. Cerebro 3, a bit of a hidden gem here. I go back and forth on the builds, right? It's basically like, do I want to be a Killmonger US Agent deck, or do I want to play the multiple 1-drops like Nightcrawler and Kingpin, or whatever 1/3 you feel like playing? I have ended up here. I think US Agent particularly is like a good nod to Doom 2099 list. It's quite relevant in a lot of matchups, honestly. And then you have the Killmonger in here to make the Shou-Lao matchups a little bit easier, especially a lot of the modern Shou-Lao lists are doing things with Maverick, which require a 1-drop. You throw priority, you Killmonger that thing, and you can win games even when you aren't, doubling your Cerebro and things of that nature. So just generally, I kind of think this deck's a little bit of a hidden gem. I think there's a lot going on here in terms of, I have a lot of power. I can interact with you. If you're playing a Star-Lord deck, I've got Daredevil Cosmo. If you're playing, I mean, Daredevil Cosmo is kind of good against a lot of stuff right now. If you're playing a Supergiant deck, I am Cerebro. I am probably just going over the top of you here. If you're playing an Invisible Woman deck, things get a little more dicey, but you know, Killmonger can do some stuff there. Maybe we'll be able to figure something out about Invisible Woman. Like, maybe you have to Cosmo the Invisible Woman lane, prevent them from prodigying stuff, and then beat them face to face with like 12s and things like that, because they're going to have a bunch of 2/12s, and you might be able to go over the top of that with your Cerebros. Like, combo on combo gets a little bit more iffy, but you just have a lot of tools in this list. Just a ton of tools and a ton of power. Of course, you're a Cerebro deck. There are some inherent downsides there. To absolutely nobody's surprise, Danish has been playing Hela. Now, Hela is a deck that is weirdly positioned. It doesn't go tall enough to beat a lot of the combo decks, but it can. And it goes definitely tall enough to beat a lot of the mid-range decks, but sometimes they play Stardust. And so you end up with a deck that is like pretty okay, but a lot more in the middle than in truly dominant Hela fashion. When Hela is dominant, it's usually in mid-range metagames that aren't interacting with her in a meaningful way. We're not in one of those. We're in a bit of a half-and-half metagame. So she has to figure out, you have to be a lot smarter to play a Hela deck right now, which is mostly why Danish is kind of the only person doing it. But you can do it if you are smart enough. There were 2 players in the top 16 with a couple of different takes on traditional ongoing. The major difference between them is whether they're devoted to being a Spectrum deck or whether they're using the Magus Serra option instead. Those are generally the sort of 2 divergent points here. Magus Serra, for the record, if you skip 5 and you have a Serra in your deck and you have a Moonstone on the Magus lane, you'll get a double Serra discount. That's kind of the pitch for that over the direction of Spectrum. My instinct is that I actually do prefer that one. It's a little more unpredictable, a little more explosive power. People are very used to playing against Spectrum, but this is a much safer list, and I typically recommend the safe list when I talk about this stuff because I think a lot of the people who are climbing are going to want to play a safe list. And this is a deck that is absolutely a very safe list, and I think it's a really solid option if you want to take something that is just cheap and good and solid and can compete in a lot of different games. This is a deck that can go linear in the sense that you're doing like your Sam Wilson Captain America scaling with a Spectrum, or it can go multiplicative in the sense that you're doing Iron Man and Moonstone and Mystique. A lot of different options are available to you at any given point in time. As much as I do believe that the ongoing deck is better served by being a Shou-Lao hybrid right now, the base ongoing list is still quite solid. I've got an honorable mention here because people are going to be looking for lists to play Ensabanur in. This is a deck that finished 16th in the Golden Gauntlet. I gotta, like, when I saw this, I was like, was there a glitch? Like, it's crazy. A player named Zorako, probably pronouncing it wrong, used it in order to have a potent Darkhawk game plan. I think that it is likely to not be the best thing long term, but it is probably the most compelling thing I've seen anyone do Ensabanur in. I will say this, I did see Big Baby messing around with Ensabanur in that gamer shell that we showed earlier, where it's just like he's just gonna go get something that's like at least not the one drop that we have on the board. That also could be a compelling direction for Ensabanur. I know people look through these and they're like, oh, well, I need a deck to play my missions. And this is actually like the most compelling I've seen an Ensabanur deck be, period. So there you go. Yeah, I'm just going to stare at the camera. You've probably watched enough of these. You know the deal. Just destroy. It's on the back end. Kind of running out of gags for this. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I've been KMBest. You've been phenomenal, and I will see you in the next one. Have a wonderful evening, and remember to like and subscribe.